The wine bottle shattered against marble, red liquid spreading across white tablecloth like blood from a fresh wound. In that single frozen moment, Claire Bennett's hands stopped trembling. The shy waitress who'd spent 3 years making herself invisible was about to destroy a billionaire's empire, or save it. Adrian Cole's face had gone purple with rage. His finger pointed at her like a loaded gun, and 5 of the world's most powerful investors sat waiting to see if the terrified woman holding a decanter would dare to speak. She did, and nothing would ever be the same. If you want to see how a single night can change everything, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain came down like punishment. Adrian Cole stood under the awning of Lumiere, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant, the kind of place that didn't advertise because it didn't need to, and watched water hammer the sidewalk in sheets. His driver had dropped him at the curb 3 minutes ago, and he still hadn't moved. Inside that building, in a private dining room he'd reserved 6 weeks in advance, 5 investors waited. Billions of dollars waited. The future of Cole Maritime waited. And Adrian Cole, who hadn't been afraid of anything since his wife died, felt something close to fear. He checked his phone. 7:58 p.m. The dinner started at 8. "Shit," he muttered, and pushed through the door. The interior hit him like a wall of warmth, low amber lighting, the murmur of quiet wealth, the smell of butter and wine and money. The maitre d' recognized him instantly, as they always did. Adrian had the kind of face people remembered, sharp jaw, dark eyes that looked like they were calculating something even when they weren't, and a scar along his left eyebrow from a childhood fight he'd won but never forgot. "Mr. Cole, your guests have arrived. Right this way." Adrian followed him through the main dining room, past tables where men in $10,000 suits sat across from women in dresses that cost more. No one looked up. That was the thing about real wealth. It didn't need to announce itself. The private room was in the back, separated from the restaurant by frosted glass doors and soundproofing thick enough to bury secrets. Adrian straightened his tie, rolled his shoulders back, and stepped inside. They were already seated. 5 men, 5 countries, 5 different ways to smile without meaning it. There was Dubois from France, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, who controlled half the Mediterranean ports. Hoffmann from Germany, built like a truck and twice as blunt, whose logistics empire moved everything from cars to missiles. Marchetti from Italy, slender and elegant, whose family had been in shipping since before Columbus. Volkov from Russia, stone-faced and dangerous, who'd survived 3 regime changes and come out richer each time. And Zhao from China, the youngest at 45, whose tech-integrated fleet was making everyone else's ships look like museum pieces. They all stood when Adrian entered, handshakes all around, firm but not aggressive, the kind of grip that said, "I respect you, but I'll bury you if I have to." "Gentlemen," Adrian said, and he hated how his voice sounded, steady, controlled, but with an edge he couldn't quite hide. "Thank you for coming." "We nearly didn't," Dubois said in lightly accented English. "Your weather is terrible." "Good thing we're not here to discuss the weather." A few polite chuckles. Adrian took his seat at the head of the table. To his left sat his translator, Marcus Reed, a wiry Brit with a talent for languages and a tendency to sweat when the pressure was on. Adrian had hired him 3 weeks ago, vetted him thoroughly, paid him twice the going rate. Reed had credentials from Cambridge and experience with the UN. On paper, he was perfect. Adrian just wished the man didn't look so nervous. "Wine?" someone asked. Adrian turned. The waitress stood near the wall, holding a bottle of Bordeaux like it might explode. She was small, maybe 5'4", with brown hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked painful. Her uniform was black and white, standard server attire, but she wore it like camouflage, like she was trying to blend into the wallpaper. Her eyes stayed down, fixed on the bottle in her hands. "Yes," Adrian said. "Start with the French." She moved forward and Adrian forgot about her. He had bigger problems. "Before we begin," Hoffmann said, his English thick and deliberate, "I want to clarify the terms. You propose a merger of operational assets, not a buyout." "Correct," Adrian said. "Cole Maritime retains ownership. You gain access to our Atlantic routes, our port contracts, and our customs relationships. In exchange, we integrate your logistics networks and share the profit margin on European operations." 50-50 split, Marchetti asked. "Weighted by contribution. It'll shake out to roughly 45, 55 in your favor for the first 3 years. After that, we renegotiate based on performance. Volkov leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. And who controls the European branch? I do, Adrian said. That's non-negotiable. Silence. The kind that felt like a knife balanced on its edge. We will need to discuss this, Zhao said quietly. His English was flawless, almost textbook. Control is not a small issue. I understand, that's why we're here. Reed cleared his throat. Shall I begin translating, Mr. Cole? Yes, start with the overview. Adrian pulled out a leather folder, thick with documents, and began walking them through the proposal. Reed translated. English to French for Dubois, English to German for Hoffmann, English to Italian for Marchetti. Volkov spoke enough English to follow, and Zhao had brought his own interpreter, a silent woman who sat behind him like a shadow. Everything was going fine. Until it wasn't. Adrian was explaining the logistics framework, laying out shipping lanes and turnaround times when Dubois's expression changed. It was subtle, a tightening around the eyes, a shift in posture, but Adrian had built his career on reading faces. Is there a problem? Adrian asked. Dubois frowned. You just said our ports would be secondary hubs. This is not what we agreed in principle. I didn't say that. I said they'd be integrated into the secondary tier, which is different. It means, Reed interrupted, translating quickly, but Dubois's frown deepened. No, Dubois said. He is saying we are backup. This is not acceptable. Adrian felt the first flutter of panic. Reed, what did you tell him? I translated exactly what you said, sir. Then translate this. The secondary tier is not a backup system. It's a classification based on volume capacity, not priority. Reed spoke in French. Dubois listened, then shook his head and said something sharp. Reed's face went pale. What did he say? Adrian demanded. He's questioning the integrity of the proposal. The integrity? Hoffmann cut in, his voice like gravel. You are telling us one thing in English and another in French. This is not how honest men do business. I'm not telling you different things, Adrian said, and now his voice was rising. There's been a miscommunication. A miscommunication? Marchetti's smile was thin and cold, or a deliberate deception. Adrian's hands curled into fists under the table. This was falling apart. Everything he'd worked for, everything he'd risked, his company, his daughter's future, his own sanity, was crumbling because his translator couldn't get the words right. Reed, Adrian said, voice tight. Fix this. Now. Reed tried. He really did. But with every translation, things got worse. Hoffmann started arguing about tariff terms Adrian had never mentioned. Marchetti accused him of trying to undercut Italian labor agreements. Zhao's interpreter whispered something that made Zhao's face go hard and unreadable. And Volkov just sat there, watching it all with the expression of a man who'd seen this play before and knew how it ended. Adrian felt like he was drowning. The waitress refilled his wine. He didn't notice. This is unacceptable, Dubois said, switching to English so everyone could understand. We came here in good faith, Mr. Cole, but if you cannot even communicate your own proposal clearly, how can we trust you to manage a multi-billion-dollar operation? You can trust me, Adrian said, and he heard the desperation in his own voice. Hated it. Couldn't stop it. This is a translation issue, not a trust issue. They are the same thing, Volkov said. His English was rough but clear. Words matter. If your man cannot say what you mean, then we do not know what you mean. And if we do not know, we do not sign. Adrian looked at Reed. The translator was sweating through his shirt, his hands shaking as he flipped through notes that weren't helping. I apologize, Reed stammered. The technical terminology, it's more complex than I anticipated. Then figure it out, Adrian snapped. Reed tried again. He translated Adrian's reassurance into German for Hoffmann, and Hoffmann's face went from annoyed to furious. He just called our concerns trivial, Hoffmann said. Is this a joke to you? What? No, Reed, what the hell are you? I said manageable, not trivial. You called us stupid. Marchetti was standing now. You think we don't understand business? The room erupted. Everyone was talking at once. 3 different languages colliding in midair, and Adrian couldn't control it. He tried to speak over them, tried to calm it down, but the noise just got louder. Documents were being shoved back across the table, chairs scraped against hardwood. Volkov was saying something to Zhao in Russian, and Zhao's interpreter was whispering rapidly in Mandarin, and Adrian could feel it slipping away. All of it, everything, his company, his legacy, the merger that was supposed to save Cole Maritime from the debt his father had left him, the future he was supposed to build for his daughter. And then a voice, quiet but clear, cut through the chaos. "Excuse me." Everyone stopped. The waitress, small, mousy, invisible, was standing at Adrian's elbow. She'd set down the wine bottle. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. "He didn't say you were stupid," she said softly. "The translation was wrong." Adrian stared at her. "What?" "The German translation. He said manageable, but the word Marcus used was unwichtig, unimportant. That's why Mr. Hoffman is upset." The room had gone completely silent. Adrian felt his temper, already frayed to nothing, snap clean in half. "Are you kidding me right now?" His voice was low, dangerous. "You're a waitress. You don't know what the hell you're talking about." She didn't flinch. "I know German, and I know what he said was wrong." "You know German." Adrian laughed, and it came out mean. "You know German. Do you also know how to keep your mouth shut and do your job?" Her face flushed, but she didn't back down. "I was just trying to... To what? Help?" Adrian stood up, and he knew he was being cruel, knew he was taking out his rage on someone who didn't deserve it, but he couldn't stop. "You think you're helping? You're a server. You pour drinks. You don't speak unless spoken to, and you sure as hell don't interrupt a business meeting to pretend you understand things you don't." "Mr. Cole," Reed started. "Shut up, Reed." Adrian turned back to the waitress. "Go stand in the corner. Better yet, get out. I don't want to see you again." She stood there for one more second, her face pale, her jaw tight. Then she nodded once, picked up the wine bottle, and walked back to the wall. Adrian sat down, his heart pounding. "Gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. Let's get back to—" "No," Dubois said. Adrian stopped. "What?" "I want to hear what she has to say." "She's a waitress. She speaks German," Hoffman said. "Or she thinks she does. Let her prove it." Adrian felt the ground shift under him. "You're not serious." "I am very serious," Hoffman said. "Your translator has insulted me 3 times in 10 minutes. Either she is wrong, and we continue, or she is right, and your man is incompetent." Adrian looked at the waitress. She was still standing by the wall, holding the bottle, her face unreadable. "Fine," Adrian said. "Go ahead, embarrass yourself." She set the bottle down, wiped her hands on her apron, and when she spoke, her voice was different, steadier, clearer, like she'd been holding it back and finally let it go. "Herr Hoffman," she said in flawless German, "Mr. Cole did not mean to insult you. He said your concerns were manageable, which in this context means they can be addressed through the operational framework he's proposing. The word Marcus used, unwichtig, was incorrect. The proper translation would be handhabbar or zu bewältigen. I apologize for the confusion." Hoffman's eyebrows went up. He stared at her, then at Adrian, then back at her. "Your accent is Bavarian," he said slowly, in German. "My father was from Munich," she replied, still in German. "I grew up speaking both." Hoffman sat back in his chair. "Well," he said, switching to English, "she's right. That is what he should have said." Adrian felt like he'd been punched. Dubois leaned forward. "And the French? What did he tell me?" The waitress hesitated, glancing at Adrian. He didn't know what to say. Didn't know what to do. His entire reality had just tilted sideways. "Go on," Marchetti said, and he was smiling now, amused. "Tell us." She took a breath. Then she spoke in French, rapid, fluent, with the same precision she'd used in German. Dubois listened, his expression shifting from suspicion to surprise to something close to approval. "She is correct," Dubois said. "He told me the ports would be auxiliary, which sounds like we are an afterthought. What Mr. Cole meant was integrated into the distribution framework, yes?" "Yes," Adrian said, and his voice sounded far away. "Then why didn't your man say that?" Volkov asked. Everyone looked at Reed. The translator had gone gray. Reed started. "I thought—" "You thought wrong," Zhao said quietly. His interpreter whispered something. Zhao nodded. "My associate agrees. There have been multiple errors. Adrian felt the room slipping out of his control again, but this time it wasn't chaos. It was worse. It was judgment. "Gentlemen," he said, trying to pull it back, "I take full responsibility for the miscommunication. We can bring in a new translator. Or," Marchetti said, "we can use the one who's already here." Adrian froze. "What?" "The waitress." Marchetti gestured at her. "She clearly knows what she's doing. She's not a professional translator." "Your professional translator just cost you a deal," Dubois said bluntly. "I'd rather trust the amateur who gets it right." Adrian looked at her. She was still standing there, her face unreadable, her hands loose at her sides. She didn't look shy anymore. She looked calm, like she'd been waiting for this her whole life. "No," Adrian said. "Absolutely not." "Then we leave," Hoffman said, and he started to stand. Panic shot through Adrian like voltage. "Wait, we came here in good faith," Volkov said. "You have wasted our time with bad translations and worse temper. If you cannot find someone who speaks clearly, then we are done." "She's a waitress," Adrian repeated, but even he could hear how weak it sounded. "I don't care if she's a janitor," Dubois said. "Can she do the job or not?" Every eye turned to the waitress. She didn't speak, just looked at Adrian, waiting. And Adrian Cole, who controlled shipping routes across 3 oceans, who'd built an empire from his father's wreckage, who hadn't asked anyone for help since the day his wife died. Adrian Cole had no choice. "Fine," he said, the word like broken glass in his mouth. "Fine. You want her? Take her." The waitress stepped forward, and the night changed. Her name, Adrian learned later, was Claire Bennett, but in that moment she was just the woman who'd walked into the center of his life and refused to disappear. She moved to Reed's chair. Reed stumbled out of it, looking relieved and humiliated in equal measure. Claire sat down, smoothed her apron, and looked at the 5 investors with a calm that Adrian didn't understand. "Where were we?" she asked. For the next hour, Adrian watched his merger get saved by a waitress. She didn't just translate. She clarified. Every time Adrian explained a concept, she broke it down in each language, French for Dubois, German for Hoffman, Italian for Marchetti, and then, when Volkov muttered something in Russian, she answered him in flawless Russian that made the old man's eyes go wide. "You speak Russian?" Volkov asked in English. "My mother was from St. Petersburg," Claire said. "I grew up with it." "Your accent is northern, educated." She was a literature professor. Volkov studied her for a long moment. Then he smiled. Not the polite business smile, but something real. "Then we will get along." Adrian just sat there, watching it happen. Watching his control evaporate. Watching the investors stop looking at him and start looking at her. She explained the logistics networks better than he had. She answered questions about tariffs and port schedules with precision Adrian didn't know she had. She smoothed over the tension Reed had created, turning suspicion back into trust, chaos back into order. And Adrian hated it. No, that wasn't right. He didn't hate her. He hated that he'd been wrong. Hated that he'd yelled at her, humiliated her, dismissed her as just a waitress when she was clearly something else entirely. Hated that she was better at this than Reed, better than Adrian had expected anyone to be. Hated that she'd seen him lose control. "Mr. Cole?" He looked up. Marchetti was watching him. "The profit-sharing model," Marchetti said. "You mentioned renegotiation after 3 years. What are the terms?" Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. He'd had a whole section prepared for this, graphs and projections, but his brain felt scrambled. "We review performance metrics," he started. "If the European branch exceeds projected revenue by more than 15%, we adjust the split to 60-40 in our favor," Claire finished smoothly, in Italian. "With additional bonuses for early delivery benchmarks and customer retention rates above 92%. Marchetti nodded. "And if we underperform?" "Then the split stays at 55-45, and we review the operational bottlenecks to determine cause." Claire switched to English, looking at Adrian. "That's right, isn't it?" Adrian stared at her. "How did you—" "I read the documents while I was pouring wine," she said simply. They were on the table. She'd read his documents, upside down, in 3 languages, while serving drinks, and she'd understood them better than Reed. Who the hell was this woman? That is acceptable, Marchetti said. He looked at Dubois and Hoffman. They both nodded. Good, Zhao said. Then we moved to the technology integration clause. They talked for another hour. The food came and went, duck confit, braised lamb, roasted vegetables that Adrian didn't taste. He ate mechanically, listening to Claire navigate the conversation like she'd been doing this her whole life. She was patient with Hoffman's stubbornness, respectful of Volkov's suspicion, charming with Marchetti's vanity. She asked Zhao about his fleet's AI systems and actually understood his answers. She quoted shipping regulations from memory. She made a joke in Russian that made Volkov laugh, actually laugh, something Adrian had never managed. And through it all, Adrian sat at the head of the table, the man who was supposed to be in charge, and felt like a guest in his own deal. By 10 o'clock, they'd covered the major points. Dubois and Hoffman were satisfied with the port agreements. Marchetti had negotiated better terms on labor contracts. Zhao and Volkov were still wary, but they weren't walking out. It was progress, real tangible progress, and it had nothing to do with Adrian. I think, Dubois said, setting down his wine glass, we are ready to discuss final terms. Agreed, Hoffman said. Adrian should have felt relief. Instead, he felt hollow. Before we do, Volkov said, and his voice carried weight, I have a question. Everyone looked at him. This woman, Volkov gestured at Claire. She is not your employee, Mr. Cole. No, Adrian said slowly. She works for the restaurant. Then why is she here? It was a fair question, and Adrian didn't have a good answer. Because your translator was incompetent, Marchetti said, and she was not. Exactly, Volkov said. He looked at Claire. What is your name? Claire Bennett. Miss Bennett, you have done more for this deal tonight than anyone else at this table. Why? Claire hesitated. For the first time all night, she looked uncertain. I don't know, she said finally. I heard the mistakes, and I couldn't let them stand. Why not? Because words matter, Claire said. And when they're wrong, people get hurt. Silence. The kind that felt like respect. I like her, Volkov said, looking at Adrian. You should hire her. I don't need, Adrian started. You need her, Dubois interrupted. Reed almost destroyed this deal in an hour. She saved it in one. If you are serious about this merger, you need someone we can trust to communicate clearly. She's a waitress, Adrian said, and it sounded weaker every time. She's a translator, Hoffman corrected. A damn good one. Adrian looked at Claire. She was watching him with those calm, unreadable eyes. No triumph, no smugness, just waiting. Miss Bennett, Adrian said carefully, do you have experience in corporate translation? No? Any formal training? I have a master's degree in comparative linguistics from Columbia, she said quietly. But I haven't used it in 3 years. The table went silent again. Columbia, Zhao repeated. That is a very good school. It was, Claire said. Why are you working as a waitress? Marchetti asked. And it wasn't cruel, just curious. Claire's face shuddered. Personal reasons. No one pushed. But Adrian saw the glances exchanged around the table. The investors reassessing her, realizing she wasn't what she'd seemed. Neither had he. Here is what I propose, Volkov said. Miss Bennett stays for the rest of this negotiation. We pay her as a consultant. If the deal closes, Mr. Cole hires her formally. If it doesn't, she walks away with our money and our thanks. That's not, Adrian started. I agree, Dubois said. As do I, Hoffman added. Marchetti nodded. Zhao's interpreter whispered something, and Zhao said, Yes, this is fair. 5 investors, 5 agreements, and Adrian hadn't been asked. He looked at Claire. What's your rate? I don't have one. Name a number. She thought about it. $5,000? For the night? Adrian's eyebrows went up. That was more than Reed was getting. For the night, she confirmed. It was a power play. A small one, but deliberate. She knew she had leverage now, knew they needed her more than she needed them. Adrian respected that, even as it infuriated him. Done, he said. But you work for me, not them. Clear? Crystal, Claire said. She stood up, untied her apron, and set it on the back of her chair. Underneath, she was wearing a simple black dress, professional but plain. She smoothed it down, straightened her shoulders, and sat back down, not as a waitress, but as a consultant. The shift was subtle, but everyone saw it. "Shall we continue?" Claire asked. And they did. Cute. The deal closed at 2:47 a.m. Adrian signed first, his signature bold in black across the merger documents. Then Dubois, Hoffman, Marchetti, Zhao, and finally Volkov, who took his time, reading every word twice before putting pen to paper. When it was done, they shook hands. Real handshakes this time, not the polite business kind. Hoffman clapped Adrian on the shoulder hard enough to hurt. Marchetti kissed Claire's hand, which made her blush. Volkov said something in Russian that made her laugh. "Congratulations, Mr. Cole," Dubois said. "You've just become a very powerful man." "We'll see," Adrian said. They filed out one by one, leaving Adrian and Claire alone in the private dining room. The table was a mess. Empty wine bottles, stained napkins, documents scattered everywhere. The candles had burned down to nubs. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the windows were still streaked with water. Claire started gathering papers. "Leave it," Adrian said. She stopped. I said, leave it." He sat down, suddenly exhausted. "Sit." She sat. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Adrian poured himself a glass of water, drank half, set it down. "I owe you an apology," he said finally. Claire didn't answer. "I was wrong. About you. About what you knew. I shouldn't have yelled at you." "You were under pressure," Claire said quietly. "That's not an excuse." "No," she agreed. "It's not." Adrian looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time all night. She wasn't beautiful in the obvious way. No model cheekbones, no striking features. But there was something in her face, something steady and strong that he hadn't seen before. "Columbia," he said. "Master's in linguistics. That's not a casual degree." "No." "So why are you waiting tables?" Her jaw tightened. "I told you, personal reasons." "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I'm giving." Adrian leaned back. "Fair enough." He'd pushed too hard already. "The investors want me to hire you," he said. "I know." "Do you want the job?" Claire hesitated. "I don't know." "You don't know." Adrian laughed, tired. "You just saved $1 billion deal, and you don't know if you want to work for me." "I know what I'm worth," Claire said. "I'm just not sure you do." It was a challenge. Quiet, but unmistakable. "Try me," Adrian said. $80,000 a year, full benefits. Title of Senior Translation Consultant, not assistant, not coordinator. I report directly to you, not through HR. And I want it in writing before I start. Adrian whistled softly. "You don't ask for much." "I'm very good at what I do." "I noticed." He stood up, pulled out his phone. "I'll have my lawyer draft the contract tomorrow. You start Monday." I didn't say yes. "You will," Adrian said. "Because you know you're wasted pouring wine, and because you're too smart to walk away from this." Claire stood too. They were close now, close enough that Adrian could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the faint scar on her chin, the exhaustion she was hiding. "You don't know anything about me," she said. "I know you're brilliant," Adrian said. "I know you're proud, and I know you just spent 6 hours proving you're better than every expert I hired. That's enough." She studied him for a long moment. Then she picked up her apron. "I'll think about it," she said. She walked to the door, opened it, and stopped. "Mr. Cole?" "Yeah?" "You're a good businessman," Claire said. "But you're a terrible boss. If I take this job, that changes." Then she left. Adrian stood alone in the empty room, surrounded by the wreckage of the most important night of his career, and he started laughing. Not because it was funny, because she was right. And because for the first time in years, he didn't mind being wrong. Claire didn't think about it. She took the job. Monday morning, 8:47 a.m., she walked into Cole Maritime's headquarters on Lexington Avenue wearing a gray suit she'd bought at a thrift store and shoes that pinched her feet. The building was all glass and steel, 43 floors of money and ambition, and when Claire stepped through the revolving doors into the marble lobby, she felt like an imposter. The security guard checked her ID twice. "Claire Bennett," he read aloud, squinting at her driver's license. You're new? Today's my first day. He handed it back, still suspicious. Executive floors 42. Elevators are on your left. The elevator was empty except for a man in a suit that cost more than Claire's monthly rent. He didn't look at her. She watched the numbers climb, 10, 15, 20, and tried to remember how to breathe. The doors opened on 42. The space hit her immediately. Open concept, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Manhattan, desks arranged in precise rows like soldiers. Everyone was already working, typing, talking on phones, moving with the kind of purpose that came from knowing exactly what they were worth. Claire stood in the elevator bay, clutching her bag, and wondered what the hell she'd been thinking. You lost? A woman appeared at her elbow, mid-30s, red hair, sharper than a knife. Her badge read, Jennifer Wu, Chief Operations Officer. I'm looking for Mr. Cole's office, Claire said. Jennifer's eyes flicked over her, taking in the thrift store suit, the worn bag, the nervous hands. You're the translator. It wasn't a question. Yes. He's in meetings until 10. You're in the corner office, East Wing. Jennifer started walking without checking if Claire followed. We don't usually bring consultants in-house, so you'll be working independently. Cole wants you accessible but not integrated into the team structure. Make sense? Not really. It means you're here because the investors insisted, not because we need you. Jennifer stopped at a door, pushed it open. This is you. The office was small but had a window. A desk, a chair, a computer that looked new. A stack of folders waited on the desk, each labeled with a different country name. Those are your current projects, Jennifer said. Contracts that need translation review, correspondence with the European partners, legal documents for the merger finalization. You'll report directly to Cole, but operational questions go through me. Clear? Crystal, Claire said, borrowing Adrian's word from Friday night. Jennifer's mouth twitched, almost a smile. He's not easy to work for, just so you know. I got that impression. Good. Then you won't be surprised when he yells. Jennifer turned to leave, then paused. The kitchen is down the hall. Coffee's free, but the good stuff is in Cole's private stock and he doesn't share. Lunch is on your own. Don't be late to meetings, don't miss deadlines, and don't make him look bad in front of clients. You do that, you'll survive. She left. Claire set her bag down, sat in the chair, and stared at the folders. 12 of them. 12 countries, 12 different languages, 12 different ways this job could eat her alive. She opened the first one. By 10:15, she'd gotten through 3 contracts and found 4 translation errors that would have cost Cole Maritime roughly $6 million in tariff misunderstandings. She flagged them, made notes, and started on the 4th folder when her phone rang. Not her cell. The desk phone. She picked it up. This is Claire Bennett. Conference room 3. Now. Adrian's voice clipped and cold. Then he hung up. Claire grabbed a notebook and went. Conference room 3 was at the end of the hall. All glass walls and a table big enough to seat 20. Adrian was already there, standing at the head, and he wasn't alone. Jennifer sat to his right, and across from her was a man Claire didn't recognize. 50s, expensive suit, the kind of face that came from too many client dinners and not enough sleep. Miss Bennett, Adrian said without looking up from his tablet. This is Richard Carver, our lead counsel. Richard, this is Claire Bennett, the consultant I mentioned. Richard nodded, didn't offer a handshake. We have a problem, Adrian said. He tapped his tablet, and the screen on the wall lit up with a contract, dense legal text in German. This is the revised port agreement from Hoffman. It came in this morning. I need it translated and reviewed by noon. Claire looked at the screen. 12 pages, single-spaced legal terminology so thick she could barely parse the first paragraph. Noon, she repeated. That's an hour and 45 minutes. I'm aware. That's not enough time for a proper legal review. Then do an improper one. Adrian finally looked at her and his eyes were hard. The investors are waiting on my response. I'm not telling them we need more time because my translator can't keep up. Claire felt her jaw tighten. I didn't say I couldn't keep up. I said it's not enough time to do it right. Do it fast, then fix it later if you have to. Adrian turned to Richard. Send her the file. We'll reconvene at 11:45. Wait, Claire said. Adrian stopped. If I rush this and miss something critical, that's on me, Claire said carefully. But if you approve a contract based on a rush translation and it costs you money, that's on you. Are you comfortable with that risk? Silence. Jennifer was watching with the expression of someone witnessing a car crash in slow motion. How long do you need? Adrian asked, his voice dangerously quiet. 3 hours. Maybe 4. You have 2. Mr. Cole, 2 hours, Miss Bennett. That's not a negotiation. He picked up his tablet. Richard will send you the file. Don't disappoint me. He walked out. Richard sent the file without a word. Jennifer lingered just long enough to murmur, "Told you," before she left too. Claire stood alone in the conference room, staring at the contract on the screen, and felt the old familiar rage building in her chest. The same rage that had gotten her through graduate school, through her mother's illness, through 3 years of swallowing her pride and pouring wine for people who didn't see her. She went back to her office, pulled up the file, and got to work. 1 hour and 53 minutes later, she walked back into the conference room with a translated document, a 4-page analysis of potential legal issues, and a migraine that felt like someone driving nails through her skull. Adrian was waiting. So was Richard, and Jennifer, and 2 people Claire didn't recognize. "You're late," Adrian said. "By 3 minutes, you're welcome." Claire set the documents on the table. "The translation is complete. I found 3 clauses that don't match the original agreement we discussed on Friday. Hoffman's legal team changed the liability terms, shifted the insurance requirements, and added a penalty clause for delivery delays that wasn't there before." Adrian's expression didn't change. "Show me." She walked him through it, page by page, clause by clause, highlighting the differences between what they'd agreed to and what Hoffman was now proposing. Richard took notes. Jennifer pulled up the original contract on her tablet for comparison. "This penalty clause," Richard said slowly, "if it goes through, we're liable for up to $2 million per delayed shipment." "Correct," Claire said. "We never agreed to that." "No, you didn't." Adrian was reading the contract, his jaw tight. "This is deliberate." "Probably," Claire said. "Hoffman's smart. He's testing to see if you're actually reading the revisions or just rubber stamping them. And if I'd approved this without catching it, you'd have signed away a lot of leverage." Adrian looked at her, and for the first time since she'd walked into his office, something shifted in his face. Not quite respect, but close. "Good work," he said. 2 words. That was it. But Claire felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. "I'll call Hoffman," Adrian said. "Richard, draft a counter-response. I want those clauses removed and the original terms reinstated. If he pushes back, we threaten to delay the entire merger finalization." "That could set us back weeks," Jennifer said. "Then Hoffman can explain to the other investors why he tried to screw us." Adrian stood. "Claire, I need you on the call. If Hoffman tries to claim translation issues again, you shut it down. Clear?" "Clear." The call happened at 2 p.m. Hoffman was not happy. "Mr. Cole," he said in his thick German accent, his face filling the video screen in the conference room. "I received your response to the revised contract. I must say, I am confused by your objections." "I'm not objecting to revisions," Adrian said. "I'm objecting to changes that weren't discussed. We discussed liability terms. We discussed shared liability. Your new clause puts all penalty risk on Cole Maritime." Hoffman frowned. "That is not what the contract says." "It's exactly what it says." Adrian glanced at Claire. She pulled up the relevant clause on her tablet, held it up to the camera. "Paragraph 7, subsection 3, Claire said in German. "The language specifies that penalty fees for delays exceeding 48 hours are borne solely by the primary shipping contractor, which in this case is Cole Maritime. The original agreement stated penalties would be split proportionally based on operational control. This is a unilateral change." Hoffman's eyes narrowed. "You are the translator from Friday." "I am." "And you believe my legal team made an error?" "I believe they made a strategic revision," Claire said carefully, still in German. "Whether it's an error depends on whether you intended to change the terms or not." A long pause. Hoffman leaned back in his chair, studying her through the screen. "You are very precise with your words," he said. "It's my job. Your job is to translate, not to analyze. In this case, they're the same thing." Another pause. Then Hoffman smiled. Not warmly, but with something like acknowledgement. "Mr. Cole," he said, switching to English, "it seems you have hired someone who pays attention. That is good. The clause was indeed a test. You passed." Adrian's jaw tightened. "A test. We need to know you are serious about this partnership, that you read the fine print. Too many American businessmen do not." Hoffman shrugged. "I will have my team revert to the original terms. But understand, this will not be the last time we test you." "I'd expect nothing less," Adrian said, his voice tight. The call ended. Adrian sat there for a moment, staring at the blank screen. Then he looked at Claire. "A test," he repeated. "Apparently. And if you hadn't caught it, you'd have failed." Adrian laughed, short and sharp. "You're enjoying this." "A little," Claire admitted. "Don't." Adrian stood, grabbed his jacket. "Jennifer, push the rest of today's meetings to tomorrow. Richard, make sure the revised contract is finalized by end of week. Claire, you're with me." "Where are we going?" Claire asked. "Lunch. You've been here 6 hours and you haven't eaten." "I'm fine." "That wasn't a request." He walked out. Claire looked at Jennifer, who just shrugged. "Like I said, not easy to work for." Claire grabbed her bag and followed. They ended up at a diner 3 blocks from the office, the kind of place with cracked vinyl booths and coffee that tasted like burnt regret. Adrian ordered a burger. Claire ordered soup. "You don't eat much," Adrian said. "I'm not very hungry." "You're never hungry, or you can't afford to eat?" Claire looked up sharply. "Excuse me?" "Your suit," Adrian said, nodding at her jacket. "It's good quality, but it's at least 5 years old. Your shoes are worn through at the heel. You didn't bring lunch, and you looked relieved when I said I was buying. So either you're broke or you're bad at taking care of yourself." Heat flooded Claire's face. "That's none of your business." "It is if it affects your work." "It doesn't." "Prove it. Eat the soup." Claire wanted to throw it at him. Instead, she picked up the spoon and took a bite. It was good, better than she'd expected. She took another bite. Adrian watched her for a moment, then picked up his burger. They ate in silence for a while. Outside, the lunch rush moved past the window. Suits and ties, delivery bikes, tourists with cameras. Manhattan in motion, indifferent and relentless. "Why'd you take the job?" Adrian asked finally. Claire set down her spoon. "You offered it." "That's not an answer." "You're very demanding for someone who just met me 4 days ago." "I'm demanding because I need to know if you're going to last." Adrian leaned forward. "You're smart. I'll give you that. But smart doesn't mean reliable. I've seen plenty of brilliant people burn out in this industry because they couldn't handle the pressure. So I'm asking again, why'd you take the job?" Claire considered lying. Considered telling him it was about the money, or the challenge, or the chance to use her degree again. All of those were true, but they weren't the whole truth. "Because I was tired of being invisible," she said. Adrian went still. "For 3 years I served people who looked through me," Claire continued. "I poured wine, cleared plates, and smiled while they talked about art and politics and business like I wasn't even there. And the whole time I knew I could do what they did. I knew I was smarter than half of them. But it didn't matter, because I was just the help. And now? Now I'm not." Claire met his eyes. "You saw me. Maybe you didn't want to. Maybe you fought it, but you saw me, and you gave me a chance, so here I am." Adrian leaned back, studying her. "That's honest. You asked." "I did." He took a drink of coffee, grimaced. "This is terrible." "Then why are we here?" "Because the food's cheap and no one from the office comes here." Adrian set the cup down. "I don't like eating where people can watch me." Claire understood that, more than she wanted to admit. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Depends on what it is." "Friday night, when you yelled at me, was that really about the translation, or was it about something else?" Adrian's face hardened. "Does it matter?" "It does if it's going to happen again." "It won't." "How do I know that?" "You don't," Adrian said bluntly. "But I'll tell you this. I don't yell without reason. I was wrong about you, and I apologized. That doesn't happen often. Take it as a sign that I'm capable of learning." "Are you?" "We'll find out." They finished eating. Adrian paid, left a $20 tip on a $15 check. They walked back to the office in silence, the city noise filling the space between them. At the elevator, Adrian stopped. You did good work today, he said. Keep it up. That's it? No feedback, no notes? You want notes? Adrian smiled, and it wasn't kind. Fine. You're defensive when you're challenged. You overthink simple questions, and you hold grudges. You're also the best translator I've ever worked with, and if you quit in the next 6 months, I'm screwed. So stop waiting for me to fire you, and just do the job. He got on the elevator. The doors closed. Claire stood there, anger and something like satisfaction burning in her chest. Then she went back to her office and got to work. The next 3 weeks were brutal. Adrian wasn't exaggerating about the workload. Claire translated contracts, reviewed legal documents, sat in on conference calls with investors who tested her at every turn. Dubois sent her poetry in French just to see if she'd catch the literary references. Marchetti asked her to translate a 16th century shipping manifest for fun. Volkov had her interpret a 2-hour argument about tariff law that had nothing to do with the merger and everything to do with proving she could keep up. She kept up. But it cost her. She worked 12-hour days, sometimes 14. She stopped eating lunch. She drank coffee until her hands shook. She went home to her tiny apartment in Queens and fell asleep on the couch with legal documents spread across her chest. And Adrian noticed. You look like hell, sick, he said one Thursday morning, walking into her office without knocking. Claire didn't look up from her screen. Good morning to you, too. When's the last time you slept? I slept. How many hours? Enough. Adrian closed her laptop. She glared at him. What are you doing? You're taking the afternoon off, Adrian said. I have 3 contracts due tomorrow. They can wait. No, they can't. Marchetti needs the Italian version by 5, and Zhao's team wants the Mandarin translation for their board meeting. Claire, Adrian's voice was sharp. You're no good to me if you collapse. Go home. Sleep. Come back tomorrow. I don't need... That wasn't a request. They stared at each other. Claire's hands were shaking from too much caffeine and not enough food, and she hated that he could see it. Fine, she said, but if those contracts are late, I'll handle it. You don't speak Italian or Mandarin. Then I'll delay the deadlines. Adrian opened her laptop again, saved her work, and closed it. Go. Claire wanted to argue, but she was so tired and he was right, and she didn't have the energy to fight him. She went home. She slept for 16 hours. When she came back Friday morning, there was a box on her desk. Inside was a new laptop, lighter, faster, with a screen that didn't flicker. There was also a note in Adrian's handwriting. You can't do good work with bad tools. A C. Claire stared at the laptop for a long time. Then she opened it and got back to work. But something had shifted. Adrian still pushed her, still demanded perfection, still didn't suffer mistakes. But he also started checking in. Not often, not obviously, but he'd stop by her office at the end of the day and ask if she'd eaten. He'd move deadlines when she was drowning. He'd cover for her when Hoffman got aggressive on calls. It wasn't kindness, it was strategy. He was protecting his investment, but it felt like something else. You're staring, Jennifer said one afternoon, catching Claire watching Adrian through the glass wall of his office. Claire jerked her attention back to her screen. I'm not. You are. And you're not the first. Jennifer sat on the edge of Claire's desk. Word of advice? Don't. Don't what? Get attached. Cole doesn't do personal relationships. He's married to this company, and everything else is just background noise. I'm not interested in him, Claire said. Good. Keep it that way. Jennifer stood. He's brilliant and he's driven, but he's also damaged. His wife died 4 years ago, and he's been running from it ever since. He'll work you to death if you let him, because that's all he knows how to do. Claire didn't answer, but she thought about it later that night, alone in her apartment, staring at the ceiling. Adrian Cole was a hard man, demanding, cold, impossible to please. But he'd seen her when no one else had, and somehow that mattered more than it should. The call came at 11:43 p.m. on a Tuesday. Claire was already asleep, had been for maybe an hour, when her phone lit up the dark bedroom. She grabbed it without thinking, still half dreaming, and croaked out something that might have been hello. I need you at the office. Adrian's voice, wide awake and sharp. Now! Claire sat up, her brain scrambling to catch up. What happened? Volkov's team just sent revised terms for the Russian distribution network. They're threatening to pull out if we don't agree by morning. Morning Moscow time or morning here? Moscow, which gives us 4 hours. Claire looked at her clock. Midnight in 15 minutes. I can't. Yes, you can. Car's already on its way to you. Be downstairs in 10 minutes. He hung up. Claire sat there for 5 seconds, her mind blank with exhaustion and disbelief. Then she got up, threw on yesterday's clothes, and made it downstairs in 8 minutes. The Blacktown car was waiting, engine running. She got in. The driver didn't speak. They cut through empty Queen streets toward Manhattan, the city reduced to streetlights and shadows. By the time she walked into the office at 12:37 a.m., she'd had 3 sips of gas station coffee and 0 coherent thoughts. Adrian was in the main conference room, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking like he'd been awake for days. Maybe he had. Richard was there too, red-eyed and rumpled. Jennifer sat in the corner with her laptop, typing furiously. Finally, Adrian said when Claire walked in. He shoved a tablet at her. 23 pages, legal Russian. I need to know what we're actually agreeing to before I sign anything. Claire took the tablet. The text was dense, technical, and her eyes were so tired the Cyrillic letters kept blurring together. I'll need at least 2 hours, she said. You have 90 minutes. After that, I'm calling Volkov with or without your analysis. That's not enough time to... Then work faster. Adrian was already walking away, phone pressed to his ear. Richard, get our legal team on standby. Jennifer, pull the original framework agreement so we can compare. His voice faded as he moved into the adjacent room. Claire stood there holding the tablet, exhaustion and anger fighting for control. Richard cleared his throat. There's coffee in the kitchen. Fresh pot. You'll need it. Thanks, Claire muttered. She went to the kitchen, poured a cup that could strip paint, and went back to the conference room. She sat down, opened the document, and started reading. The Russian was complex, not just legal terminology, but deliberately obscure phrasing designed to hide intent. Whoever had drafted this knew exactly what they were doing. Claire had to read each clause 3 times just to parse the meaning, then cross-reference it against the original agreement, then check it again to make sure she wasn't missing subtext. 40 minutes in, she found the first problem. An hour in, she found 3 more. At 2:14 a.m., she walked into the side office where Adrian was on a call with someone in Singapore. She stood in the doorway until he noticed her, then held up 4 fingers. He ended the call. Talk. 4 major changes, Claire said. She was running on fumes and caffeine and spite at this point. First, they've shifted the profit distribution model. Instead of quarterly payments, they want annual settlements with a 6-month delay for accounting verification. That ties up your cash flow for 18 months. Adrian's jaw tightened. Next, second, they've added a clause that gives them unilateral approval over shipping routes. If they don't like a route you choose, they can veto it without cause. That's operational control, which you explicitly refuse to give up. Bastards, keep going. Third, the liability insurance requirements. They've tripled the minimum coverage and specified that it has to be through Russian underwriters. That'll cost you an extra 12 to 15 million a year. And the fourth? Claire hesitated. This one was worse. The termination clause, she said. Original agreement stated that either party could exit with 6 months' notice and no penalty fees. The new version says Cole Maritime can only terminate if you buy out their entire stake at 130% of current valuation, but they can leave any time with 30 days' notice and no penalty at all. The room went dead silent. Adrian stared at her. Say that again. They can walk away whenever they want. You're locked in unless you pay them a fortune to leave. That's not a partnership, Richard said from the doorway. That's a hostage situation. Adrian stood up, moved to the window. Manhattan glittered below, indifferent and cold. He stood there for a long time, his reflection ghost-pale in the glass. Did Volkov sign off on this? He asked finally. His name's on the document, Claire said. That doesn't answer my question. Did he sign off, or did his legal team go rogue? Claire pulled up the signature page on her tablet. There's a digital signature with his credentials, but the timestamp is odd. It's dated 3 days ago, but the document metadata says it was created yesterday. Adrian turned. Meaning someone might have copied his signature from a previous document and pasted it onto this one. Can you prove that? Not without access to the original files, but the metadata inconsistency is enough to question the document's authenticity. Adrian looked at Richard. Opinion? If the signature's forged, the whole document is void, Richard said. But proving forgery means accusing Volkov's team of fraud. That's a nuclear option. What if we just ask him? Claire said. Both men looked at her. Ask him, she repeated. Call Volkov directly. Tell him you received a revised agreement and want to confirm he personally approved the changes. If he did, we deal with it. If he didn't, we just expose someone trying to sabotage the deal. Adrian checked his watch. 2:47 a.m. in New York, 9:47 a.m. in Moscow. He'll be in his office, Adrian said. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, hit dial. The call connected on the second ring. Cole, Volkov's voice came through, rough and amused. It is early for you, no? Early and getting earlier, Adrian said. He put the phone on speaker. I need to ask you about the revised distribution terms your team sent over. A pause. What revised terms? Adrian's eyes met Claire's. The document we received 3 hours ago, Adrian said carefully. 23 pages, signed with your credentials, requesting approval by 8 a.m. Moscow time. I signed nothing. Volkov's voice had gone hard. Who sent this? It came from your legal department's email server. Which lawyer? Adrian looked at Claire. She pulled up the email header. Dmitry Korsakov. Volkov said something in Russian that sounded like a curse. Korsakov works for Petrov. Who's Petrov? Adrian asked. My former partner. We had a disagreement 2 years ago. He was forced out of the company, but he kept allies in the legal department. Volkov's voice was ice. He is trying to sabotage our agreement. Can he do that? Not if I find him first. Another stream of Russian. Send me the document. All of it, including metadata. I will handle this. And the original terms? Adrian asked. Are we still on track? Yes. The agreement we discussed stands unchanged. I will send official confirmation within the hour. Volkov paused. Your translator, she is the one who found the inconsistencies. She is. Tell her she has saved us both a great deal of trouble. And you, Cole, you have good instincts. Not many would think to call me directly. I didn't, Adrian admitted. Claire suggested it. A low chuckle. Then she has good instincts too. Keep her close. People like that are rare. The call ended. Adrian set the phone down, looked at Claire. She was leaning against the wall, her coffee cup empty, her face pale with exhaustion. You just prevented a sabotage, he said. I just did my job. No. Adrian walked toward her. Your job is translation. What you did was think 3 steps ahead and solve a problem I didn't even know existed. That's not standard consulting work, Claire. That's strategy. Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she didn't say anything. Go home, Adrian said. Get some sleep. Take tomorrow off. I have the Marchetti contracts. They can wait. You've earned a break. This time, Claire didn't argue. She was too tired to fight, and for once, Adrian's orders felt less like demands and more like concern. She went home. She slept until 2 in the afternoon. When she woke up, there were 6 missed calls from Jennifer and a text from Adrian. Volkov confirmed the sabotage. Korsakov's been fired. Original deal is back on track. Nice work. Claire stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back, Thanks. See you Thursday. She made it until Friday before everything fell apart. It started with a phone call Claire wasn't supposed to hear. She was working late, again, translating a contract amendment for Dubois, when she heard Adrian's voice through the wall. His office shared a ventilation system with hers, and when he got loud, the sound carried. I don't care what the board thinks, Adrian was saying. The European branch needs centralized control, and I'm the one who's going to run it. A pause. Someone responding on the other end of the call. I built this merger from nothing, Adrian continued, his voice rising. I brought the investors together. I negotiated the terms. I'm not handing operational control to some committee that's never run a shipping company. Another pause. Longer this time. Then they can vote me out, Adrian said flatly. But until they do, I'm making the calls. He hung up. Something hit the wall, probably his phone. Claire sat very still, staring at her screen without seeing it. She'd known Adrian was under pressure, but she hadn't realized how much. The merger was supposed to be his triumph, the thing that secured Cole Maritime's future. But it sounded like the board didn't trust him to manage it. And if they didn't trust Adrian, what did that mean for the people who worked for him? She tried to focus on the contract, but the words wouldn't stick. After 20 minutes of reading the same paragraph, she gave up and went to get coffee. Adrian was in the kitchen. He looked like hell, tie loose, hair disheveled, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. He was pouring whiskey into a coffee mug. "That's not coffee," Claire said. Adrian didn't look up. "Your powers of observation are stunning." "You okay? Do I look okay?" "No." He laughed, short and bitter. "At least you're honest." He took a drink, grimaced. "Board meeting tomorrow. They want to discuss my role in the European operations." "I heard." Adrian's eyes snapped to hers. "You were listening." "The walls are thin. I didn't mean to." He studied her for a moment, then shrugged. "Doesn't matter. You'll find out soon enough anyway." "Find out what?" "That they think I'm a liability." Adrian set the mug down harder than necessary. "Too aggressive. Too controlling. Too much of a risk. Never mind that I'm the one who saved this company after my father ran it into the ground. Never mind that I'm the one who built the relationships with Dubois and Hoffman and Volkov. They want someone safer, someone who won't rock the boat." "And you don't do safe," Claire said. "I don't do failure." Adrian picked up the mug again. "My daughter's future depends on this company. I'm not letting a bunch of risk-averse board members destroy what I've built just because they're scared." Claire had heard Adrian mention his daughter exactly once before, the night of the merger dinner in passing. She'd wondered about it since, but had never asked. "How old is she?" Claire asked now. Adrian blinked, caught off guard by the question. 6, almost 7. "What's her name?" "Emma." His voice softened, just slightly. "Emma Cole." "Does she know what you do?" "She knows I work a lot. She doesn't understand why." Adrian stared into the mug. Her mother would have understood. Sarah was good at explaining things to her, making it make sense. But I'm not Sarah. Claire heard the grief in his voice, raw and unhealed, even after 4 years. "She died young," Claire said quietly. It wasn't a question. 31. Brain aneurysm. No warning, no symptoms. She was fine one day and gone the next. Adrian's hands tightened around the mug. Emma was 3. Too young to understand death, old enough to know her mother was gone. I had to figure out how to be both parents while running a company that was drowning in debt. So I worked, and I kept working, because that's all I knew how to do. "And now you're still working," Claire said, "because it's still all I know." Adrian looked at her. "You think I'm a bastard for that?" "I think you're scared," Claire said. "And when you're scared, you get mean. I get it. I do it too." Adrian's laugh was rough. "You? Mean? You're the most careful person I've ever met." "Careful isn't the same as kind." "No," Adrian agreed. "It's not." They stood there in the empty kitchen, the office dark and silent around them. Outside, the city kept moving, cars and lights, and people who didn't know or care about 2 exhausted people trying to hold themselves together. "Why are you still here?" Adrian asked finally. "It's almost 9. "Dubois' contract." "It can wait." "You said that about 3 other projects this week, and they all ended up being urgent anyway." Adrian smiled, tired. "Fair point." He poured the rest of the whiskey down the sink. "Come on, I'll buy you dinner." "You don't have to, I know, but Emma's with her nanny tonight, and I don't feel like eating alone." He grabbed his jacket. "You like Thai food?" Claire hesitated. This felt like crossing a line. Not a professional one, exactly, but something close. "I like Thai food," she said. They went to a place in Midtown, small and crowded, with plastic chairs and overhead fluorescents that buzzed. The food was good. Adrian ordered too much: pad thai, green curry, spring rolls, mango sticky rice. Claire ate until she was full, then kept eating because it was the best meal she'd had in weeks. "You really don't feed yourself," Adrian observed. "I feed myself, just not well." "Why not?" Claire set down her fork. "Because good food is expensive, and I spent 3 years learning to live on nothing. It's a hard habit to break." "You're making decent money now." "Decent isn't the same as secure." Claire picked up her water glass. "I grew up without much. My dad was a translator. My mom was a professor. They were brilliant, but they were terrible with money. We were always one emergency away from broke. When my mom got sick, the medical bills buried us. My dad took every job he could find, but it wasn't enough. He died 6 months after she did. Heart attack. The doctors said it was stress. Adrian went still. How old were you? 27. I'd just finished my master's degree. Claire's voice was flat, clinical. I inherited their debt, their apartment, and about $3,000 in savings. I tried to find work in my field, but no one was hiring, so I started waiting tables. And I kept waiting tables because the debt never went away. Is it gone now? Most of it. Another year, maybe 2, and I'll be clear. Adrian leaned back in his chair. You could have declared bankruptcy. And destroy my credit for a decade? No thanks. Pride, Adrian said. Responsibility, Claire corrected. They were my parents. Their debts were my debts. That's not how the law works. It's how family works. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Yeah, I guess it is. They finished eating. Adrian paid, left another massive tip. They walked back toward the office in silence. At the corner of Lexington and 43rd, Adrian stopped. I'm sorry, he said. Claire turned. For what? For assuming you were just a waitress who got lucky. For not seeing what you'd survived just to be standing in that room. Adrian's hands were in his pockets, his shoulders tight. You earned your place here. I should have said that earlier. Claire felt something crack open in her chest, something she'd been holding closed for years. Thank you, she said. Adrian nodded, started to turn away, then stopped. The board meeting tomorrow, he said. I'm going to fight for control of the European branch, and I'm probably going to lose. Why are you telling me this? Because if I lose, the new management might clean house, bring in their own people, and you're my hire, which means you're vulnerable. Claire's stomach dropped. Are you firing me? No. But I'm warning you that someone else might. Adrian met her eyes. I'm telling you this so you're not blindsided. So you can start looking for other options if you need to. I don't want other options, Claire said. I want this job. You might not have a choice. Then I'll fight for it. Claire stepped closer. You taught me that, whether you meant to or not. Adrian smiled, tired but real. I'm a terrible teacher. Probably, but I'm a fast learner. He left her at the subway entrance, walked back toward the office alone. Claire watched him go, then turned and headed underground. She didn't sleep that night, just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about debt and death, and the strange, sharp man who'd given her a chance when no one else would. The board meeting happened at 10 a.m. Claire wasn't invited. But she watched from her office as Adrian walked into the executive conference room, his face carved from stone. 2 hours later, he walked out. Jennifer was waiting in the hallway. Claire saw them through the glass, saw Jennifer's face go pale, saw Adrian shake his head. Then Adrian looked toward Claire's office. Their eyes met across the floor. He'd lost. Jennifer came to Claire's office 15 minutes later. Emergency meeting, she said. Main conference room, 5 minutes. Everyone's required. Claire's hands went cold. What happened? You'll find out. The conference room was packed. Everyone from the executive floor, plus department heads Claire had never met. Adrian stood at the front, his face blank. I'll keep this brief, he said. As of this morning, the board has voted to restructure the management of the European merger operations. Effective immediately, I will no longer be serving as the primary director of the European branch. Murmurs rippled through the room. Instead, Adrian continued, his voice flat, operational control will be transferred to a joint management committee consisting of representatives from each investor group. The committee will be chaired by an independent executive to be named within the next 2 weeks. Someone raised a hand. What's your new role? I'll remain CEO of Coal Maritime's domestic operations. The European branch will function as a separate entity with shared ownership. Translation, they cut him out of the thing he'd built. Questions can be directed to Jennifer or Richard, Adrian said. That's all. He walked out before anyone could respond. The room erupted in whispered conversations. Claire sat frozen, her mind racing. Jennifer stood at the front, trying to restore order. Everyone back to work. We'll have more information by end of day. Claire didn't go back to her office. She went to Adrian's. He was standing at the window again, staring out at the city. You should have knocked, he said without turning. Your door was open. That's not an invitation. Claire closed the door behind her. Who's going to run the European branch? No idea. The committee gets to choose. And you have no say? I have a vote. 1 out of 6. Adrian's laugh was hollow. Democracy in action. Claire moved closer. I'm sorry. Don't be. I knew this was coming. He turned and his face was empty of everything except exhaustion. I pushed too hard. Made too many enemies. The board's been looking for an excuse to sideline me for years. I finally gave them one. By building a merger that's going to make them all rich? By refusing to play nice while doing it. Adrian sat on the edge of his desk. Turns out people would rather have a leader who smiles and compromises than one who gets results the hard way. That's stupid. That's business. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he was wrong, that he'd been right to fight, that the board was making a mistake. But she'd learned enough in 6 weeks to know that being right didn't matter if you didn't have the votes. What happens to me? She asked quietly. Adrian looked at her. I don't know. That's up to the new management. So I just wait? Unless you want to quit first. Claire shook her head. I'm not quitting. Then you wait. Adrian stood, moved toward the door. And Claire, whatever happens, you deserve better than getting caught in this. He left. Claire stood alone in his office, surrounded by awards and photos and evidence of a career built on brilliance and stubbornness in equal measure. And she realized, with a clarity that felt like falling, that she'd started to care about Adrian Cole. Not as a boss, not even as a friend exactly, as someone who'd fought the same battles she had, someone who refused to disappear even when the world wanted him to, someone who saw her. The notification came 3 days later. Claire was in a conference call with Marchetti, routine contract review, when her email pinged. She ignored it until the call ended, then opened her inbox. The subject line read, Management Transition Meeting, Required Attendance. Her stomach dropped. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow, 9 a.m., all consultants and department heads. Claire read the email 3 times, looking for clues. There were none. She called Jennifer. No answer. She walked to Adrian's office. He wasn't there. Finally, at 6 p.m., she got a text from him. Tomorrow's meeting is about the new European director. Be prepared. For what? Claire typed back. The response came immediately. Everything. Claire arrived at 8:47 a.m. wearing the same gray suit she'd bought for her first day. Her hands were steady, but her stomach felt like broken glass. The conference room was already half full. She recognized most of the faces. Department heads, senior consultants, a few board members she'd seen in passing. Jennifer was there, sitting near the back with her arms crossed. Richard stood by the window, looking grim. Adrian wasn't there yet. Claire took a seat near the middle, not too far forward, not hidden in the back. The kind of position that said she belonged without drawing attention. At 8:55, the door opened and 5 people walked in that Claire had never seen before. 3 men, 2 women, all wearing suits that cost more than her monthly salary. They moved with the synchronized precision of people who'd worked together a long time. Behind them came Adrian. He looked like he hadn't slept, but his face was neutral, unreadable. He took a seat at the side of the table, not at the head, where he usually sat, but in the second row. The demotion was visible and deliberate. At exactly 9 a.m., the door opened one more time. Dubois walked in first, then Hoffman, then Marchetti, Zhao, and finally Volkov. All 5 investors, all in person. Claire's pulse kicked up. This wasn't a routine management announcement. This was something bigger. Dubois moved to the head of the table. He didn't sit, just stood there, his silver hair catching the light, and waited for the room to go silent. Thank you all for coming, he said in his precise English. We know this meeting was called on short notice. We appreciate your flexibility. No one responded. The room felt like a held breath. As you know, Dubois continued, the Board of Coal Maritime has restructured the management framework for the European merger operations. This was a necessary decision to ensure the long-term stability and success of the partnership. Claire glanced at Adrian. His face hadn't changed. After extensive deliberation, Dubois said, the investment committee has selected a new executive director for the European branch. This person will oversee all operations, serve as the primary liaison between Coal Maritime and the investor consortium, and report directly to the Joint Management Committee. He paused. The silence was suffocating. The position will be offered to Miss Claire Bennett. The room exploded. Not with applause, with shock. People were talking over each other, turning to stare at Claire, demanding explanations from the board members who looked equally stunned. Claire sat frozen, her mind blank. This wasn't possible. This wasn't real. She'd been here 6 weeks. She was a translator, not an executive. She didn't have experience running operations, managing teams, overseeing billion-dollar logistics networks. This had to be a mistake. Quiet, please, Dubois said, raising his voice slightly. The room settled into tense silence. I understand this is unexpected. Allow me to explain. He looked directly at Claire. Miss Bennett, in the short time you have worked with us, you have demonstrated exceptional skill in communication, analysis, and crisis management. You prevented a sabotage attempt that would have cost us millions. You have earned the trust of every investor in this room. More importantly, you understand both the technical requirements and the cultural nuances necessary to manage a multinational operation. I'm not qualified, Claire heard herself say. Her voice sounded far away. You are more qualified than you think, Hoffman said from across the table. We have watched you work. You do not just translate words, you translate intent. You see problems before they become disasters. These are not skills that can be taught. But I don't have management experience. Neither did Cole when he started, Marchetti interrupted. He built his empire through intelligence and instinct. You have both. Claire looked at Adrian. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't read. This is insane, Jennifer said from the back. With all due respect, Claire's been here a month and a half. You're handing her control of a multi-billion-dollar operation? We are offering her the position, Volkov corrected. She has not yet accepted. And if she refuses? Richard asked. Then we find someone else, Dubois said simply. But it will take time we do not have. The European operations launch in 4 weeks. We need leadership in place immediately. Claire's head was spinning. 4 weeks. They wanted her to take over an operation that didn't exist yet, manage teams she'd never met, coordinate logistics across 6 countries, and report to 5 investors who'd built their careers on eating people like her for breakfast. I need to think about this, Claire said. You have until tomorrow morning, Zhao said. It was the first time he'd spoken. We understand this is a significant decision, but we cannot delay longer than that. What about Adrian? Claire asked, and she saw him tense at the sound of his name. He built this merger. He should be running it. Mr. Cole's skills are best suited to domestic operations, Dubois said diplomatically. The European branch requires a different approach. Translation: Adrian had burned too many bridges. They didn't trust him not to make more enemies. The board supports this decision, one of the unfamiliar executives said. Claire vaguely recognized him as the chairman. Mr. Cole will remain CEO of Cole Maritime's American operations. Miss Bennett would be heading a separate but affiliated entity. What's the salary? Claire asked. If this was real, she needed to know. 200,000 base plus performance bonuses and stock options, Dubois said. Housing allowance if you need to relocate. Full executive benefits package. Claire's breath caught. 200,000. She'd been making 80. You would also have a staff, Marchetti added. Operations managers in each major port city, an administrative team, legal support. You would not be doing this alone. But I would be responsible if it failed. Yes, Volkov said bluntly. That is what leadership means. Claire looked around the table. Every investor was watching her with varying degrees of expectation. The board members looked uncomfortable but resigned. Jennifer looked furious. Richard looked calculating, and Adrian looked like a man watching his empire be handed to someone else. I need to speak with Mr. Cole, Claire said. Privately. Dubois nodded. Take 15 minutes. We will be here when you return. Claire stood. Adrian followed. They walked out of the conference room in silence, down the hall, into his office. He closed the door. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You didn't know, Claire said finally. It wasn't a question. I knew they were making a decision. I didn't know it would be you. Adrian moved to the window, his usual refuge. I should have seen it coming. How could you have seen this? I'm nobody. You're exactly what they want, Adrian said. Smart, capable, not entangled in corporate politics. You don't have enemies because you haven't been here long enough to make any. And most importantly, you're not me. This isn't about you. Everything in that room is about me. Adrian turned. They're replacing me with you because you're everything I'm not. Diplomatic where I'm blunt, patient where I'm demanding. They think you'll cooperate where I would fight. And what do you think? Adrian studied her. I think they're right, and I think you'd be good at it. Claire sat on the edge of his desk. I don't know how to run a company. No one does until they try. I learned by screwing up constantly. You'll learn faster because you're smarter. I'm not... Don't. Adrian's voice was sharp. Don't diminish yourself. Not now. You've spent 6 weeks proving you're exceptional. Don't backtrack just because someone's finally acknowledging it. Claire looked down at her hands. They were shaking. I'm scared, she admitted. You should be. Anyone who isn't scared of this job is too stupid to do it well. Adrian sat in the chair across from her. But fear doesn't mean you can't succeed. It just means you understand the stakes. What if I fail? Then you fail. But you'll fail doing something remarkable instead of spending the rest of your life wondering what would have happened if you'd been brave enough to try. Claire met his eyes. Is that what you tell yourself? Every single day. Adrian smiled, tired. The difference is, I've already failed. Multiple times. The board just made it official. You're still winning. This doesn't feel like winning. It will. Eventually. Adrian leaned forward. Listen to me. This isn't charity. The investors didn't offer you this position because they felt sorry for you. They offered it because you earned it. You saved deals, caught sabotage, built trust with people who don't trust anyone. That's not luck. That's skill. But I've only been here 6 weeks. And in 6 weeks, you've done what most people can't do in 6 years. That's the point, Claire. You're not just good at this. You're better than the people who've been doing it their whole lives. Claire wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the confidence he seemed to think she should have. But all she felt was the weight of expectation crushing down on her shoulders. If I take this job, she said slowly, what happens to you? I keep running the domestic operations, which is what I should have been doing all along instead of trying to control everything. Adrian's voice was flat. I'll be fine. Will you? Does it matter? Yes, Claire said, and she was surprised by how much she meant it. It matters. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. Something shifted in his face, softened just slightly. I'll survive, he said quietly. I always do. The question is whether you will. Claire stood, straightened her suit, took a breath. I'm going to accept, she said. I know. But I want something from you first. Adrian raised an eyebrow. What? Help me. Not officially, not in any way the board or the investors would know about. But when I'm drowning, when I don't know what I'm doing, when everything's falling apart, I need to know I can call you. They won't like that. I don't care what they like. I'm asking what you'll do. Adrian stood, held out his hand. You can call me. Anytime. I'll answer. Claire shook his hand. His grip was firm, steady. Thank you, she said. Don't thank me yet. You haven't started drowning. They walked back to the conference room together. Everyone was waiting, the tension thick enough to cut. Claire took her seat, looked at Dubois. I accept the position, she said, on 3 conditions. Dubois' eyebrows rose. Conditions? First, I want full hiring authority for my immediate team. I choose my own people. No committee approval required. Agreed, Dubois said. Second, I want quarterly performance reviews with the full investor committee, not just reports through intermediaries. If I'm failing, I want to hear it directly. That is reasonable, Zhao said. Volkov nodded. And third, Claire said, looking directly at the board chairman, I want it in writing that Adrian Cole retains his position as CEO of domestic operations with no interference from the European branch management. What he built stays his. The room went still. The chairman glanced at Adrian, then back at Claire. That's already the agreement. Then put it in my contract, make it official. Because if you try to push him out while I'm running the European operations, I quit. Immediately. No notice. You would walk away from a $200,000 salary to protect someone who just lost his job? Jennifer asked, incredulous. He didn't lose his job. He lost control of something he built. That's different. Claire kept her eyes on the chairman. And yes, I would walk away. Do we have a deal or not? The board members exchanged looks. Dubois was smiling slightly, like he'd just confirmed something he'd suspected. "We have a deal," the chairman said finally. "All 3 conditions will be included in your contract." "Then I accept." Dubois extended his hand across the table. "Welcome aboard, Miss Bennett. Or should I say, Director Bennett?" Claire shook his hand. "Then Hoffman's. Then Marchetti's, Zhao's, and finally Volkov's. You have steel in you," Volkov said quietly in Russian. "This will be interesting to watch." "I hope so," Claire replied in the same language. The meeting dissolved into logistics. Richard started talking about contract timelines. Jennifer began outlining the organizational structure Claire would inherit. The board members excused themselves, their work done. Adrian stayed in his seat, watching it all happen. Claire caught his eye across the table. He nodded once, she nodded back. And just like that, everything changed. The next 2 weeks were chaos. Claire's promotion became official on a Wednesday. By Thursday, she had an office on the 43rd floor, bigger than Adrian's, with views of the East River. By Friday, she had a secretary she didn't ask for and a calendar full of meetings she didn't understand. The staff started treating her differently immediately. People who'd ignored her when she was a translator suddenly wanted FaceTime. Jennifer became coldly professional instead of just cold. Richard started CCing her on emails that used to go only to Adrian. And Adrian became a ghost. He was still in the building, still running domestic operations. But their paths rarely crossed. When they did, conversations were brief and professional. He'd ask about contract timelines. She'd ask about shipping schedules. They'd exchange information like colleagues, not like 2 people who'd eaten Thai food and talked about dead spouses in an empty kitchen. Claire told herself it was fine. This was what she'd signed up for. Professional distance was necessary when you were managing separate divisions of the same company. But it felt like losing something she hadn't realized she'd had. On her 10th day as director, Claire had her first major crisis. A shipment of automotive parts bound for Hamburg got held up in customs because of documentation errors. The German importer was threatening to cancel the contract. Hoffman was furious, and Claire had no idea how to fix it. She spent 3 hours on the phone with customs officials, getting nowhere. The paperwork was technically correct, but there was some regulatory nuance she wasn't catching. Her German was fluent, but bureaucratic German was a different language entirely. At 7 p.m., sitting alone in her new office, Claire pulled out her phone. She stared at Adrian's contact for a full minute before calling. He answered on the 2nd ring. "What's wrong?" "How did you know something's wrong?" "You never call unless it is." "What happened?" Claire explained the customs situation. Adrian listened without interrupting. "Forward me the documentation," he said when she finished. "I'll look at it." "You don't have to." "Claire, send me the files." She sent them. 10 minutes later, her phone rang again. "Paragraph 6, subsection B," Adrian said. "The tariff classification code. It's correct for automotive parts, but Germany changed their import categories last month. You need to refile under the new classification system." "How do you know that?" "Because I deal with German customs constantly, and they pull this kind of thing all the time. It's not about the parts. It's about testing whether you know the current regulations. So they're messing with me. They're messing with everyone. You're just new, so they're messing harder." Adrian paused. "Call the Hamburg Customs Office directly. Ask for Werner Busch. Tell him you're calling on my recommendation and you need the updated classification schedule. He'll send it over." "Will he actually help?" "He owes me a favor. Use my name." Claire made the call. Werner Busch was gruff but cooperative. Within an hour, she had the updated codes, refiled the documentation, and got confirmation that the shipment would clear by morning. She called Adrian back. "It worked," she said. "Thank you." "Don't mention it." "I mean it. You saved me." "I gave you a phone number. You did the rest." Adrian's voice was quiet. "How's it going otherwise?" "Honestly, I'm terrified every single day." "Good. That means you're paying attention." A pause. "You're doing fine, Claire. Better than fine. I've been hearing things." "What kind of things?" "That Marchetti thinks you're brilliant, that Zhao's team is impressed with your logistics planning, that even Hoffman admitted you handled the customs crisis better than he expected." "Hoffman said that?" "In his own way, which means he respects you." Adrian's voice shifted, became more serious. "You're going to be okay. You know that, right?" "I don't know anything anymore." "Then trust me. You're going to be okay. They talked for another 20 minutes. Not about work. About nothing important. Emma's school play, Claire's terrible apartment heating, a documentary Adrian had watched about shipping history. The kind of conversation that felt normal and easy, and nothing like the professional distance they'd been maintaining. When they finally hung up, Claire sat in her empty office and felt less alone than she had in days. The crisis became routine. Not the customs problem specifically, but the pattern. Something would go wrong. Claire would panic, she'd figure it out, or call Adrian, and the world would keep turning. She hired her team carefully. An operations manager from Zhao's company who knew AI logistics. A legal specialist Richard recommended. An administrative coordinator who'd worked with Marchetti and understood Italian business culture. She held her first management meeting and fumbled through it badly. She negotiated her first independent contract and got decent terms, but not great ones. She was learning, fast and messy and constantly off balance, but she was learning. 3 weeks into her new role, the investors called a meeting in Paris. All 5 of them would be there. They wanted Claire to present the first quarterly operational plan in person. It was a test, she knew. They wanted to see if she could handle the pressure of a room full of people who could destroy her career with a single vote. Claire flew to Paris on a Tuesday morning alone. The investors had offered to send someone with her, but she'd refused. If she was going to fail, she'd fail on her own terms. The meeting was at Dubois' office, a converted 19th century building near the Luxembourg Gardens, all marble and gold trim, and the kind of quiet that came with serious money. Claire arrived 15 minutes early. Dubois' assistant showed her to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows and a table that could seat 30. She was the only one there. She set up her presentation, tested the projector, arranged her notes. Her hands were shaking. She hid them under the table. The investors arrived together. Clearly they'd met beforehand to discuss strategy. They took their seats without ceremony. "Director Bennett," Dubois said. "Please proceed." Claire stood, pulled up the first slide, and started talking. She'd prepared for an hour. She talked for 90 minutes. She walked them through the operational framework she'd designed, port allocation schedules, shipping route optimization, customs coordination protocols. She showed them the cost projections, the risk assessments, the contingency plans for 12 different failure scenarios. She fielded questions in 4 languages. She defended her decisions without being defensive. She admitted gaps in her knowledge without appearing weak. And when she finished, the room was silent. Hoffman spoke first. "This is good work," he said simply. "Better than good," Marchetti added. "This is comprehensive." Zhao was reviewing the data on his tablet. "The AI integration proposal is smart. We should implement this across all operations, not just Europe." "I agree," Volkov said. "This is the first time someone has actually thought about the technology infrastructure instead of just throwing it at us and hoping it works." Dubois was smiling. "It seems our decision was correct." Claire felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, maybe. Or just the absence of terror. "There are still weaknesses," she said. "The insurance coordination needs work, and I'm not confident in the backup logistics for the Mediterranean routes." "Then fix them," Dubois said. "You have our support." "And our trust," Hoffman added. The meeting shifted to broader strategy. They talked for another 2 hours about expansion opportunities, regulatory challenges, competitive threats. Claire contributed when she could, stayed quiet when she couldn't. She was learning to read the room, to know when to speak and when to listen. By the time they finished, it was nearly 7 p.m. "We have dinner reservations," Marchetti said as they packed up. "You should join us." "I don't want to intrude." "You're not intruding. You're part of this now." Marchetti grinned. "Besides, Volkov wants to argue with you about tariff policy. It'll be entertaining." They went to a restaurant Claire couldn't pronounce, in a neighborhood she didn't know. The food was extraordinary. The wine was better. Volkov did indeed argue with her about tariff policy, and Claire held her own until he started laughing and admitted she'd made a good point. Somewhere between the main course and dessert, Claire realized she was enjoying herself. These men weren't just investors anymore. They were colleagues, maybe even allies. She flew back to New York the next morning, exhausted and exhilarated. When she got to the office, there was a note on her desk. "Heard Paris went well. Proud of you. AC." Claire stared at the note for a long time. Then she folded it carefully and put it in her desk drawer. The call came on a Saturday. Claire was at home attempting to do laundry and failing because she'd forgotten how the machines in her building worked. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered anyway. "Hello? Miss Bennett?" A woman's voice, young and uncertain. "This is Grace Holloway. I'm Mr. Cole's nanny." Claire's stomach dropped. "Is Adrian okay?" "Mr. Cole is fine, but there's been a situation with Emma. She's asking for him, but he's not answering his phone. I think it's dead. I didn't know who else to call." "What happened to Emma?" "She fell at the playground. Possible broken wrist. We're at Lenox Hill Hospital. She's scared and she wants her father." "I'll find him," Claire said. "I'm on my way." She hung up, grabbed her jacket, and was out the door in 30 seconds. She tried Adrian's phone, straight to voicemail. She tried his office line. No answer. She texted Jennifer, Richard, anyone who might know where he was. Nothing. Claire took a cab to Adrian's apartment building. She'd sent documents there before, knew the address. The doorman recognized her from her ID badge. "Is Mr. Cole home? Haven't seen him since yesterday morning, miss." Claire tried his phone again, still nothing. Then she remembered. Adrian had mentioned Emma's school play. That was today. He'd probably turned his phone off and forgotten to turn it back on. She got the school's address from a quick search, took another cab across town. The play was over. Parents were filtering out, holding children's hands, taking photos. Claire pushed through the crowd, looking for Adrian's dark hair, his sharp profile. She found him outside, talking to another parent. His phone was in his hand, dark and dead. "Adrian," Claire called. He turned, surprised. "Claire, what are you—" "Emma's in the hospital, possible broken wrist. Grace called me because she couldn't reach you." The color drained from Adrian's face. "What hospital?" "Lenox Hill." He was moving before she finished the sentence. Claire followed, jogging to keep up. They got a cab. Adrian gave the address in a voice that shook slightly. Claire had never heard him sound like that. Not angry, not demanding, scared. "She'll be okay," Claire said. "You don't know that." "I know she's at the hospital, which means she's getting help. I know Grace is with her, so she's not alone. I know broken wrists heal." Adrian didn't respond, just stared out the window, his jaw tight. They got to the hospital in 12 minutes. Adrian was out of the cab before it fully stopped. Grace met them in the waiting room, looking relieved. "Mr. Cole, I'm so sorry. I tried to call—" "Where is she?" "Exam room 4. They're doing x-rays now." Adrian was already walking. Claire and Grace followed. Emma was in a hospital bed, her left arm in a temporary splint, her face tear-streaked but brave. When she saw Adrian, her face crumpled. "Daddy!" "Hey, sweetheart, I'm here." Adrian was at her side immediately, his voice gentle in a way Claire had never heard. "You're okay. I've got you." "It hurts," Emma whispered. "I know. But the doctors are going to fix it, okay? You're being so brave." Emma nodded, sniffling. Then she noticed Claire standing in the doorway. "Who's that?" "That's Claire," Adrian said. "She works with me. She helped me find you." Emma studied Claire with serious brown eyes, Adrian's eyes. "Thank you." "You're welcome," Claire said softly. The doctor came in, a tired-looking woman in scrubs. "Mr. Cole?" "The x-rays confirm a minor fracture. We'll need to set it and cast it, but she'll heal completely in about 6 weeks." "Can I stay with her?" Adrian asked. "Of course." They took Emma for the casting. Adrian went with her. Grace excused herself to call Emma's school. Claire sat alone in the waiting room, surrounded by worried parents and fluorescent lights and the smell of antiseptic. 45 minutes later, Adrian came back out. Emma was with him, sporting a bright pink cast and looking significantly happier. "Pink is my favorite color," she announced to Claire. "It's a very good choice," Claire said seriously. "The doctor said I can get people to sign it. Will you sign it?" Claire looked at Adrian. He nodded. "I'd be honored," Claire said. Grace had a marker. Claire signed her name carefully on Emma's cast, right below where Adrian had written "Love, Dad" in messy handwriting. "Thank you for calling me," Adrian said quietly while Emma showed Grace her cast. "Grace called me. I just tracked you down." "Still, you didn't have to come." "Yes, I did." Claire met his eyes. "You would have done the same for me." "I don't have kids." "You would have done it anyway." Adrian smiled, tired but real. Yeah, I would have. They left the hospital together. Emma fell asleep in the cab, her head on Adrian's shoulder. Grace took her home. Adrian and Claire stood on the sidewalk, the city moving around them. I owe you one, Adrian said. You've already helped me a dozen times. We're even. I don't think it works like that. Then we'll keep helping each other until we stop counting. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. You're a good person, Claire Bennett. So are you, Adrian Cole. You just hide it better. He laughed, quiet and surprised. Emma likes you. I like her too. She's brave. She gets that from her mother. Adrian's voice went soft. Sarah would have liked you too. Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. They said goodnight. Adrian got in a cab. Claire watched it disappear into traffic, then walked to the subway. On Monday morning, there was a coffee on Claire's desk when she arrived. Her favorite kind. The expensive stuff from Adrian's private stock that he never shared. No note this time. But Claire understood anyway. The European operations went live on a cold morning in November, exactly 4 weeks after Claire had stood in that Paris conference room and promised she could make it work. The first shipment left Rotterdam at 6 a.m. local time. By noon, 3 more had departed from Hamburg, Marseille, and Genoa. By evening, the network was operational across 12 ports in 6 countries, and Claire was sitting in her office watching real-time tracking data scroll across 3 monitors, waiting for something to break. Nothing broke. At 9 p.m., Zhao sent an email with just 2 words, well done. At 9:15, Hoffman called to say the German operations were running smoother than he'd expected. At 9:30, Volkov texted in Russian, You have not failed yet. This is promising. Claire sat back in her chair staring at the monitors and felt something she hadn't felt in months. Not relief, exactly, but the absence of constant terror. Like she'd been holding her breath underwater and finally surfaced. Her phone rang. Adrian. You still at the office? He asked. Yeah, watching the numbers. Everything green? So far. Then go home, Claire. You've done enough for one day. What if something goes wrong overnight? Then your team will handle it. That's why you hired them. Adrian's voice was gentle. You can't monitor every shipment personally. You'll burn out before Christmas. I know, Claire stopped. I need to make sure. I get it, but you've already made sure, multiple times. Now you need to trust the system you built. Claire looked at the monitors again. Green lights, steady data, no alerts. Okay, she said finally. I'm leaving. Good. Get some sleep. She packed up, turned off the monitors, and left the office. The building was mostly empty, just security and a few workaholics on other floors. Claire rode the elevator down, stepped out into the November night, and breathed. The European branch was live. She'd actually done it. Now came the hard part, keeping it running. The board meeting happened in mid-December, 2 weeks before Christmas. It was the quarterly review Claire had negotiated in her contract, the one where the investors and board members would assess her performance and decide if she was worth keeping. She'd prepared for 3 weeks, built presentations, compiled data, rehearsed answers to every question she could imagine. She'd barely slept, barely eaten, barely thought about anything except proving she deserved this position. Adrian had offered to sit in on the meeting as an observer. Claire had refused. If she was going to succeed or fail, it needed to be on her own. The meeting started at 10 a.m. in the main boardroom. All 5 investors attended via video. Dubois from Paris, Hoffman from Berlin, Marchetti from Rome, Zhao from Shanghai, Volkov from Moscow. The Cole Maritime board members were there in person, along with Jennifer and Richard. Adrian wasn't there. Claire had asked him to stay away, and he'd agreed without argument. The chairman opened the meeting. Director Bennett, you have the floor. Claire stood, pulled up her first slide, and began. She walked them through 8 weeks of operational data, shipping volumes, delivery times, cost efficiency, customer satisfaction ratings. She showed them where the European branch had exceeded projections and where it had fallen short. She identified problems, a logistics bottleneck in Barcelona, communication issues with the Italian customs office, a software integration failure that had delayed 3 shipments. She didn't hide the failures, didn't make excuses, just presented facts and explained what she was doing to fix them. When she finished, Dubois spoke first. The Barcelona bottleneck. How long until it's resolved? 2 weeks. We're adding a secondary processing facility and hiring 4 additional logistics coordinators. That should increase throughput by 30%. And the cost? $800,000 for the facility modifications, plus ongoing labor costs. But we'll recover that in efficiency gains within 6 months. Dubois nodded. Acceptable. Hoffman leaned forward on his screen. The customs issues in Italy. These are the same problems Cole faced 2 years ago. Why are we repeating mistakes? Because I didn't know they were mistakes, Claire said bluntly. I'm learning the Italian regulatory environment as I go. Marchetti has been helpful, but there's institutional knowledge I don't have yet. Then get it, Hoffman said. Hire someone who knows Italian customs inside and out. This should not be a recurring problem. I'm interviewing candidates next week. Good. The questions continued for 90 minutes. They picked apart her decisions, challenged her projections, demanded explanations for every variance in the data. Claire answered everything, admitted when she didn't know something, defended her choices when she did. Finally, the chairman called for a recess. We'll deliberate privately. Director Bennett, please wait outside. Claire left the boardroom, walked to the empty executive lounge, and collapsed into a chair. She'd done everything she could. Now, all she could do was wait. Jennifer found her 20 minutes later. They want you back, she said. Her face was unreadable. Claire walked back into the boardroom. Every eye was on her. The chairman spoke. Director Bennett, the board and investor committee have reviewed your performance over the past 8 weeks. Claire's hands were shaking. She clasped them together. We acknowledge that you face significant challenges, the chairman continued. Taking over a newly launched operation with limited experience was a risk for everyone involved. Here it comes, Claire thought. They're firing me. However, the chairman said, the results speak for themselves. The European operations are performing at 93% of projected efficiency, which exceeds the target we set for the first quarter. Customer satisfaction is high. Costs are within budget. And most importantly, the investor consortium has expressed complete confidence in your leadership. Claire blinked. They have? We have, Dubois said from the screen. You have done excellent work under difficult circumstances. We see no reason to make any changes. In fact, Zhao added, we'd like to discuss expansion. There are opportunities in Southeast Asia that would benefit from your approach to logistics management. Claire's mind was reeling. You want to expand? Not immediately, Marchetti said. But within the next year, yes. We believe you have the capability to manage a larger operation. We're increasing your budget for the next quarter, the chairman said, and authorizing additional hires. The formal documentation will be ready by end of week. So I'm not fired, Claire said, and she heard how stupid it sounded the moment the words left her mouth. Hoffman actually laughed. No, Director Bennett, you are not fired. You are being promoted. The meeting ended 15 minutes later. Claire walked out in a daze. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd succeeded. Jennifer caught up with her in the hallway. Congratulations, she said, and for the first time since Claire had met her, Jennifer's smile looked genuine. You earned it. Thank you. For what it's worth, I didn't think you'd last a month. Jennifer shrugged. I was wrong. That doesn't happen often. Does this mean we're friends now? Don't push it. But Jennifer's smile widened slightly. Ask me again in 6 months. Claire went back to her office, closed the door, and sat in silence for 10 minutes. Then she picked up her phone and called Adrian. He answered immediately. How'd it go? They're not firing me. I could have told you that. They want to expand the operation. Give me more budget, more staff. Of course they do. You're making them money. Claire leaned back in her chair. I can't believe this is real. Believe it. You built something that works. That's not luck, Claire. That's you. I couldn't have done it without your help. You could have. You just would have taken longer. Adrian paused. I'm proud of you. The words hit harder than Claire expected. She had to clear her throat before responding. Thank you, she managed. You eating tonight, or are you going to work until midnight again? I was planning to work. No, you're not. You're meeting me for dinner, 7 p.m., that Italian place near your apartment. Adrian, not a request, Director Bennett. I'm celebrating your success whether you like it or not. Claire smiled. Fine, 7 p.m. Good. Don't be late. He hung up. Claire sat in her office for another few minutes, letting the reality sink in. Then she got back to work. Because the European branch didn't stop running just because she'd had a good performance review. But this time, the work felt different, less like drowning and more like building. Dinner was quiet, easy. They talked about everything except work, books, movies, the weird construction happening outside Adrian's apartment building, Emma's upcoming Christmas concert, Claire's ongoing battle with her apartment's heating system. It felt normal, comfortable, like they'd been friends for years instead of just a few months. As they were leaving, Adrian stopped on the sidewalk. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Sure. That first night at Lumiere, when I yelled at you, why didn't you just walk away?" Claire thought about it. "I don't know. Pride, maybe, or stubbornness. I'd spent 3 years being invisible, and I was tired of it. When you told me to disappear, something in me just refused. You could have gotten fired. I was already serving wine for minimum wage. Getting fired wouldn't have changed much." Claire looked up at him. "But staying changed everything." "For both of us," Adrian said quietly. They stood there in the cold, traffic moving past, the city indifferent and bright around them. "I need to tell you something," Adrian said. "About the board meeting today." Claire's stomach tightened. "What about it?" "They asked me if I had any objections to your promotion, if I thought you were capable of managing a larger operation." "What did you say?" "I told them you were the most capable person in that building, including me." Adrian's voice was steady. "I also told them that if they didn't give you everything you needed to succeed, they were idiots." Claire laughed, surprised. "You didn't." "I did. Richard almost had a heart attack. And they still promoted me? Because they knew I was right." Adrian's expression was serious now. "You saved my deal, Claire. Then you built something better than what I could have built. I'm not threatened by that. I'm grateful." "You don't seem like the grateful type." "I'm not, but I'm learning." Adrian smiled. "From you, actually." Claire didn't know what to say to that, so she just smiled back. They said goodnight. Adrian got a cab. Claire walked the 3 blocks to her apartment, her breath fogging in the December air. When she got home, there was an envelope under her door. Inside was a card, plain white, no decoration, with a handwritten note. "You were right. I would have done the same for you." AC Claire put the card on her refrigerator next to Emma's drawing of a pink cat that she'd brought to the office last week. Then she made tea, sat on her couch, and let herself feel something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Christmas came and went. The European operations ran smoothly. Claire hired a customs specialist for Italy, resolved the Barcelona bottleneck ahead of schedule, and negotiated a new shipping contract with a Danish company that increased their northern routes by 20%. In January, Zhao formally proposed the Southeast Asia expansion. The investor committee approved it. Claire started planning, knowing it would be another 6 months of chaos and stress and learning things she didn't know. But this time she wasn't scared. Or maybe she was, but the fear didn't paralyze her anymore. It just meant she was doing something worth doing. Adrian's domestic operations were thriving. The board had stopped questioning his decisions after the European branch succeeded. He'd hired 2 new executives, expanded Cole Maritime's Atlantic routes, and signed a partnership deal with a Brazilian shipping company that made the stock price jump 12%. They still had coffee sometimes, still called each other when problems came up, still maintained the careful balance between professional colleagues and something closer that neither of them wanted to name. Emma turned 7 in February. Adrian threw a party at his apartment, the first time Claire had seen where he lived. It was surprisingly normal. Toys in the living room, kid artwork on the fridge, photos of Sarah everywhere. Not hidden, just present, like she was still part of the family. Emma made Claire sign her new cast. She'd broken her other wrist skating and introduced her to her friends as Daddy's friend who speaks a million languages. "Only 6 languages," Claire corrected. "That's almost a million," Emma said seriously. Claire stayed until the party ended, helped clean up while Emma fell asleep on the couch. Adrian carried his daughter to bed, came back to find Claire washing dishes. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know." They finished the dishes together in comfortable silence. As Claire was leaving, Adrian stopped her at the door. "Thank you," he said, "for coming, for everything." "She's a great kid. You're doing a good job." "I'm trying. Some days are better than others. Adrian leaned against the doorframe. Sarah would have been better at this. The birthday parties, the friends, all of it. I'm just figuring it out as I go. That's all any of us are doing, Claire said. Maybe. But you make it look easy. I don't have a 7-year-old depending on me. That's different. Is it? Adrian looked at her. You have 5 multinational investors and a board of directors depending on you. A few hundred employees across 6 countries. Millions of dollars in operational liability. That's not easier. Just different pressure. Claire thought about that. I guess we both learned to handle pressure we didn't ask for. And we both survived it. So far, Adrian smiled. So far? Claire left, took the subway home, and thought about the strange path that had brought her here. From a waitress nobody saw to a director, nobody questioned. From invisible to essential. The March board meeting brought news that surprised everyone. Adrian announced he was stepping down as CEO. Not immediately, not in crisis. He'd stay through the transition, help select his replacement, ensure continuity. But by summer, he'd be gone from the executive role. I've been running this company since I was 28, Adrian said to the assembled board. For the last 4 years, I've used it as a way to avoid dealing with my wife's death. I told myself I was protecting Emma's future, but what I was really doing was hiding from being her father. The room was silent. Coal Maritime is stable now, Adrian continued. The European expansion is working. The domestic operations are profitable. You don't need me micromanaging everything anymore. What you need is someone who can lead without needing to control every detail. Someone who trusts their team and builds partnerships instead of fighting battles. He looked directly at Claire. Someone like the director of European operations, actually. But I'm not suggesting she take my job. She's better where she is. What I'm suggesting is that you find someone with her instincts and give me the space to be a full-time parent while I still can. The board agreed. They formed a search committee. Adrian stayed involved but stepped back from daily operations. Claire watched him change over the next few months. Watched him leave the office at 5 p.m. to pick Emma up from school. Watched him stop checking email at midnight. Watched him relax, gradually, into a version of himself that wasn't constantly braced for the next crisis. You seem happy, Claire told him one afternoon in May. They were having coffee in the executive lounge, a routine they'd fallen into. I'm less miserable, Adrian corrected. That's not quite the same as happy. It's close enough. Maybe. Adrian took a drink. Emma asked about you yesterday. Oh? She wanted to know if you were my girlfriend. Adrian's face was carefully neutral. I told her you were my friend who's a girl, which is different. What did she say? She said that was stupid, and I should just ask you to dinner properly instead of pretending we're only talking about work. Claire nearly choked on her coffee. She's 7. She's perceptive. Adrian set down his cup. For what it's worth, she's not wrong. I do want to ask you to dinner, properly. Not as colleagues, not as friends, exactly. Claire's heart was suddenly beating too fast. Adrian, you don't have to answer now, or ever if you don't want to, but I needed to say it. Adrian's voice was steady. You changed my life, Claire. Not just professionally. You reminded me that there's more to living than just surviving. That's not something I take lightly. Claire looked at him, really looked at him. The sharp edges were still there, the intensity, the restless intelligence. But something had softened too. Something that made him look less like a man at war and more like a man learning to be at peace. Ask me when you're not my boss anymore, Claire said finally. Adrian smiled. Fair enough. But ask me. I will. The new CEO started in July. His name was Michael Chen, and he'd built a logistics empire in Singapore before Coal Maritime recruited him. He was smart, diplomatic, and nothing like Adrian. That was probably the point. Adrian stayed on as chairman of the board, a role with authority but less operational pressure. He worked from home 2 days a week, started taking Emma to the park on Saturdays, hired a grief counselor, and actually went to the appointments. Claire's European operations expanded into Southeast Asia in September. The launch was smoother than the first one, probably because she knew what she was doing now. The investors were pleased. The board approved a budget increase for the following year. Everything was working. And on a Friday evening in October, almost exactly 1 year after Claire had walked into Lumiere with a wine bottle and a chip on her shoulder, Adrian called her. You busy? He asked. Not particularly. Why? Because I'm not your boss anymore, and I'd like to take you to dinner, properly, not as colleagues. Claire smiled. What took you so long? I wanted to make sure I was asking for the right reasons. And? And I'm asking because I want to know you better, because I like who I am when I'm with you, because Emma thinks you're wonderful and she's usually a good judge of character. Adrian paused. And because I haven't felt this way about anyone since Sarah died. And I think she'd want me to try. Claire's throat was tight. Where are we going? Anywhere but Lumiere. I'm done with that place. How about Thai food? Adrian laughed. Perfect. They went to the same little restaurant in Midtown, ordered too much food, and talked until the staff started cleaning around them. It wasn't perfect. Adrian was still difficult sometimes, still too demanding, still carried grief like a second skin. Claire was still defensive, still overthought everything, still woke up some mornings convinced she was one mistake away from losing everything. But they understood each other. The kind of understanding that came from both having survived things that should have broken them. As they left the restaurant, walking into the October night, Adrian took her hand. Thank you, he said. For what? For not disappearing when I told you to. Claire squeezed his hand. Thank you for seeing me when I did. They walked through the city together, two people who'd learned that strength didn't mean never breaking. It meant putting yourself back together afterward and choosing to keep going. The story could have ended there, but real life doesn't work in neat conclusions. Claire ran the European and Asian operations for 3 more years, expanding into South America and eventually Africa. She became one of the youngest executives in the shipping industry, spoke at conferences, got profiled in business magazines. Adrian raised Emma, served on the Cole Maritime Board, and eventually started consulting for other companies on crisis management and organizational restructuring. He was good at it. Turned out all those years of fighting had taught him something useful. They dated for 2 years before Adrian proposed. Got married in a small ceremony with Emma as the flower girl and 5 international shipping magnates in attendance. Volkov cried, though he denied it afterward. Claire never went back to waiting tables, but she kept the old apron from Lumiere in her closet, a reminder of where she'd started. Emma grew up bilingual, then trilingual, then decided she wanted to learn as many languages as her stepmother. By the time she was 12, she was fluent in 4. Adrian learned to be happy. It took time, therapy, and a lot of patience from both Claire and Emma. But he got there. And Claire learned that being seen wasn't the same as being valued, but being both was something worth fighting for. Years later, when people asked Claire how she'd gone from waitress to executive in less than a year, she told them the truth. She'd been invisible for so long that when someone finally noticed her, she refused to disappear. And sometimes refusing to disappear was the bravest thing you could do. The night Adrian had tried to throw her out of that boardroom, he'd been wrong about almost everything. Wrong about her capabilities, wrong about her worth, wrong about what she could accomplish. But he'd been right about one thing. Claire Bennett was not just a waitress. She was brilliant, proud, and stronger than anyone, including herself, had realized. And in the end, that made all the difference. Because power doesn't always announce itself with shouting and demands. Sometimes it arrives quietly, speaks 5 languages, and changes everything while pretending to pour wine. And sometimes the person you dismiss as nobody becomes the one who saves everything you've built. That's the thing about underestimating people. Eventually, they prove you wrong. And if you're lucky, they give you the chance to admit it.